All right, today we're going to break down a program called 7 Days to Drink Less. We're going to dig into its core ideas, its methods, and its whole philosophy based on how the program presents itself.
So let's jump right in with the big question this whole program is built around. What if drinking less had absolutely nothing to do with willpower? I mean, for anyone who's ever tried to cut back using just sheer grit and failed, well, that's a pretty interesting question, isn't it?
And here's the core promise. This is for people who actually enjoy a drink, but they've got that nagging voice in the back of their head saying, hey, maybe you should be drinking less. It's designed to solve that exact internal battle.
Okay, so first things first, who is this actually for? The whole method is tailored for a very specific type of person that the materials call the worried drinker.
Now, this is a really key point they make right from the start. This program is not for someone who needs clinical help with alcoholism. Nope. It's aimed at people who are, totally functioning, responsible adults, but who've just fallen into a habit of using alcohol as a crutch to cope with life.
And this kind of drinking, according to the program, it leads to some very real everyday problems. We're talking about things like your memory getting a little fuzzy, or being physically with your family but not really being present. Or maybe it's lashing out at people you care about and then just feeling so annoyed with yourself. And of course, that classic foggy brain feeling the next day.
And this right here is the absolute core idea from the program's creator, Georgia Foster. She says the issue isn't the drink itself, it's the thinking that happens right before you take that drink. That one simple idea is the bedrock of this entire method.
So if the problem is all in our heads, how do you actually fix it? Well, the answer this program proposes is a 7-day plan that uses hypnosis as its main tool. And just to give you an idea of the scale here, the materials claim that more than 108,000 people have used this method to drink less. That's a lot of people who have given this a shot. To explain the why behind it all, they've actually coined their own term, ECDS, which stands for Emotionally Conditioned Drinker Syndrome. And what that does is it totally reframes the problem. It's not an addiction or a disease, it's a learned behavior, a habit that's been conditioned into you. And if it can be learned, well, it can be unlearned. Okay, so to dig a little deeper, the method breaks drinkers down into 3 main psychological types to help people see their own patterns more clearly. First up, you've got the perfectionist drinker. Think of those high achievers in your life. They're the all-or-nothing types. They'll go weeks without a single drop, but then when they do drink, they go hard and fast, mostly just to shut down their constantly whirring brains. And of course, that's followed by a wave of guilt. Then there's the pleaser drinker. For this person, drinking is all tied up in social situations. They're terrified of looking boring or being the odd one out. So they'll drink just to fit in, often pushing right past that little voice inside that's telling them to say, no thanks.
And finally, we have the inner critic drinker. And this one is a real paradox. This is someone who has this incredibly loud, negative voice in their head, constantly nagging them, you're drinking too much, you shouldn't be doing this. And what do they do to shut that voice up? They drink. It's this crazy, self-defeating cycle.
Now, it's super important to know these aren't like strict boxes you have to fit into. The program says pretty much everyone has an inner critic, and it's usually mixed with traits from either the perfectionist or the pleaser. The whole point is just to help you see your own personal cocktail of habits. Okay, so how do you actually break these habits? Well, the program uses this really cool metaphor to explain it, flattening the mental snow. So the analogy starts like this. Just imagine your unconscious mind is like a beautiful, untouched hill covered in fresh, powdery snow.
Now think about this. Every time you repeat a habit, like reaching for a glass of wine when you're stressed, it's like you're taking a sled down that hill. The first time, it's a fresh path, but do it again and again, and that path becomes a deep, hard-packed track. Those are your neural pathways. They get so deep that your mental sled just defaults to them, making it really, really hard to steer somewhere else.
So, how in the world do you get out of those deep tracks? How do you start carving out new, healthier paths down that hill?
And here's the big claim. The program says that hypnosis is like a fresh, heavy snowfall that comes and smooths over all those old, deep ruts. It basically flattens the snow, making your mind more open and receptive so you can start consciously creating new, better paths for that sled to follow.
All right, so that's the theory. Let's take a quick peek at what the 7-day plan actually looks like in practice. So the whole journey is mapped out in 5 steps. You start by just understanding how your unconscious mind works.
Then you learn a specific inner dialogue technique to handle cravings when they pop up. From there, you get into the practical stuff, like actually having alcohol-free days without it feeling like a punishment. You'll also use visualization, what they call the mind's eye, to prep for social events. And it all wraps up with making that drink less mindset stick for good.
So, what's the daily commitment here? Well, it's basically some audio talks each day, plus a 25-minute hypnosis session. And a really big selling point they emphasize is that you do this all by yourself, privately, in your own home. And that brings us full circle, right back to that fundamental question that this whole method is built on. It kind of leaves you wondering, when it comes to drinking more than you really want to, is the real problem what's in your glass, or is it the thoughts that are swirling around in your head?